What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mar B, and you are listening to another episode of the Man Listen Show. Before we get started, let's hear a few words from our sponsors. Are costly cable bills giving you the blues? Well, Magic Streams is your answer. Watch all of your favorite teams live in HD. You will also get access to over 1,500 movies and be able to watch TV shows instantly. Magic Streams. Click the link in our bio to get more information. Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the Black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% Black all the time. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Man Listen Show. You can also subscribe to the show on iTunes, YouTube. Go to our website, www.manlistenshow.com. Please share the show. Please leave a comment. And make sure you tell everybody about the blackest radio show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'm your host, Mark B. All right, y'all. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And, on the Man Listen Show, we often talk about the importance of taking care of your mental health. So in order to talk about this topic, we brought back one of our favorite guests, Kristina Jones, the owner of More Grace Counseling. Kristina, how you doing?
I'm doing well. You like my Man Listen Show background?
I do. You came back representing. I almost always mess up the intro because I always want to call you doctor, but you future doctor. So, we're going to think it's going to happen. You're going to come back on the show and you're going to be Dr. Jones.
I appreciate that. I receive it.
Yes,
I'm over halfway there. I'm excited.
Okay. So May, Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
We've had you on the show. I think you've been on the show at least 2 times, if not 3 times before. Yeah. And, we've often talked about mental health. I've been very open and transparent about my struggles, my triumph, my overcoming mental health issues. So, I always try to lead by example and let people know, especially Black men, know that it's not something that is a bad thing. And it's something that could help you very much. In the recent past, it really, I think that us, the talk about mental health really kind of hit a fever pitch. You had people like Charlamagne the God talking about it, a lot of different podcasters, Black Twitter, everybody was talking about the importance of mental health, healing yourself. And I think it almost became something that was like cliche to say at one point. And I was worried about that because I said, is this a trend or is it something that's going to stick? So from a professional perspective, have you seen it fall off or have you seen the Black community stick with the trend of, taking care of their mental health?
Well, first, I want to validate what you noticed because you're right. It just kind of exploded, right? Everybody was talking about mental health, mental well-being, mental illness, self-care became kind of a buzzword. And it did seem like, was it going to be trendy? I think that it's going to stick around, honestly. It's, been a popular topic that most people are talking about, whether you're a mental health professional or not. I think that most people are just more aware of what it means to prioritize your mental health. From a professional standpoint, I'm happy about it. I am very happy about it. When I was in graduate school becoming a therapist, I was one of, several people in my class, maybe 20 people in my cohort, only Black student. And one of the things I talked about a lot in my classes was about how the stigma around therapy and getting help for mental health disorders was just so heavy in the Black community. And, I would jokingly say, oh, Black people don't do therapy, because Black people are doing therapy. Black people are talking about what it means to pay attention to themselves. And I love that so much. So I don't care if people feel like it's cliche. I don't care if people think it's trendy. The more we talk about it, I think the more awareness we're bringing to people paying attention to themselves in ways they never did before. So I love it. I love it so much. I think that people are paying attention to young kids and how they're experiencing things emotionally. And so all of that is really good. honestly. I can't say enough about how great it is, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. And one thing I want to talk about is you talked about your cohort and how you were the only Black face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think therapy is important, but I also dig deeper into it. And I think representation is important.
Oh, yeah.
My therapist is a Black man. He's a Black man. He's an alpha like me, right? We share a lot of similar views or whatever, but that doesn't get in the way of him calling me out on things that I need to be called out on. But what it does help is I'm able to talk freely.
Yeah.
I'm able to express myself. Like there was one time I was talking to him like a couple of months ago, and I was trying to process something, and I used an example of slavery and myself being a slave and being able to escape the plantation. And once we got through it, and we both, reached the point where it was like, that's it, that's the breakthrough. We laughed, we dapped each other up, and I told him, I said, that's why it's important I got somebody that look like me sitting across the table, because I may have not been comfortable enough to do that with somebody, with a white woman or a white man, right? I just able to express myself freely, and I got it on out. I was able to get that breakthrough. Are you seeing more representation? I mean, because you've been a therapist for a little minute now. Are you seeing more Black faces? Is there like any like organizations or societies or clubs for Black therapists? I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So I think what's happening now, with the increased awareness, is that people of color or Black therapists, we're starting to kind of find each other and create networks. And the representation piece, Marv, I mean, that's so critical. It really is.
It is.
I think seeing somebody is better than seeing nobody if you really need help, right? But seeing someone who can connect with you on just a human cultural level just brings about a completely different level of safety in the therapeutic relationship. You not all Black people are the same. No, we don't all have the same experiences, and we didn't all grow up the same and have the same beliefs, but there is some safety in sitting across from someone who does look like you. There are some cultural commonalities. There is just something about that, in your spirit. It just is. So
Right.
yeah, Black therapists here in Kansas City, we are finding each other. We are collaborating more. There are a few therapists of color on Facebook who have been leading the charge on that, with that in Kansas City, and it's been really great. Um, I think it's helpful because if I'm not seeing clients and I get referrals, I send them to other colleagues that I know, that I've connected with, that we are able to talk in networking groups and kind of get to know each other's philosophies and approaches to therapy. And I have a safe list of people that I'm like, okay, well, I'm full, but let me connect you with these, therapists in the area that are great. I'm also seeing, social media has been great in making kind of highlighting the therapist of color and Black therapists with the use of hashtags. Now you can, find people that use a hashtag like Black therapists and just start to see all these Black therapists show up on your social media timeline, which is really great because there's so few of us, and many times it's hard to find us, but I love that these different tools make it a little bit easier. So now in terms of the numbers of Black therapists, there are still a small number of us. Like the percentage, I believe, is maybe 7%.
Wow.
Of all therapists are Black. The number is still way too small. I mean, way too small. So that's something that I hope will change. I hope the increased awareness will also motivate young people to start seeing themselves in this type of career field. I go and speak at a lot of different high schools in the area. As we're doing different groups in schools, I'm always talking about how, like, hey, could you see yourself doing a group like this for young people sometimes? And just so that young people realize, like, hey, you can do this. You can be someone that helps other people in this way. And there are Black people who are extremely skilled and talented in this, and that could be you. So I hope that the numbers will start to increase, but we're still a fraction of the therapist population.
Yeah, because if it's 7%, that's not even proportional to, 13% that alleged 13% that we make up of the US population. It's still not. So if we wanted to see somebody that looks like us, it's going to be harder because there's only so many people that you all can see, right, at a certain time and manage the caseload, professionally and adequately. So do you think that it is a generational thing? You talked about young people, talking to young people. And most of the people that were leading the charge, I think around our age, I mean, in mid 40s, whatever, are you seeing the older generation, like the Gen X, the boomers, are they coming into therapy, or are they still somewhat resistant?
I would say they're probably the most resistant population, to be honest. I think our age group is definitely normalizing it a lot more. And then we see the generation that's a little bit younger than us that are really just,
the millennials and the
they are,
right.
They play no games about taking care of themselves and, prioritizing themselves and making sure they're all right. Which, there's some pros and cons to that because sometimes it's a little extreme, but at the same time, I really admire the fact that they're looking to be creative in how they take care of themselves, and they're willing to try things that older generations are not so much willing to try. But I don't fault older generations for that. There are a lot of reasons why Black people historically have not taken advantage of mental health care. I mean, systemically.
Pray it out, right? Pray it out.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. You just need to pray more, right? Yeah.
Well, but then also, the systems of healthcare and mental health care have not been for us in the past. As a doctoral student, I am buried under research all the time. I'm reading studies and I am encouraged to look at some of the traditional theories and things like that. But I can tell you that one of the struggles that I have is that all of the traditional research and theories that have formed the counseling or psychology field have been geared towards white people. There are theories that are normed and conceptualized on white culture and individualism, and really do not embody a lot of the African-centered values and practices that are central to our community. Also, there's been a lot of research, Marv, that's just has false information in it, about the inferiority of Black people. And I mean, these things were actually in studies by medical doctors that they said these things about us. And so I think historically, Black people have had maybe very valid reasons why they avoided being seen by a psychiatrist, talking to a therapist, talking to psychologists. Even present day, sometimes Black people are disproportionately prescribed medications, and they shouldn't be, or over medicated in many cases. So I think that systemic racism is a huge culprit still in why we are underrepresented, and then also why we don't seek the help that we need sometimes, because we don't always trust the system, and for good reason.
For good reasons. I mean, and that's, we just came off the pandemic, and I'm going to talk to you about that, right? And how that affected, people looking at therapy. But I saw where people were hesitant to, take anything from the medical industry, like you said, because we've been abused. I just saw a recent story about a sister. She was dealing with some trauma. She went to go see I don't know if it was a social worker or a psychiatrist, but the psychiatrist actually committed her to a hospital. She's like, no, I'm not a danger to myself. I'm just trying to get help with my trauma. And ended up being an even more traumatic experience because she was locked down in this acute psych facility. So they just added to the trauma that she had because they would not listen to her. And we know that Black women, often their pain, their trouble, whatever, when they're dealing with medical professionals, it's kind of swept under the rug. It's disregarded. So I mean, I get what you're saying 100%. I think that we still have to do our part to try to have conversations like we have right now.
Yes.
Let people know, okay, listen, there are Black professionals now that, you know, maybe not all come from a perspective like you and I are coming from in terms of like African-centered, Black-centered approach, but there is some safety because you have somebody that looks like you. And you know, not all kinfolk is skin, not all what they say, not all skinfolk is kinfolk, but I mean, it is something that we can trust more because we have more of us that are, you know, on the other side of the room when we're trying to talk to them.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, because I've seen it with our children. You know, you talked about over medicated, right? This brother gets a lot of slack. He gets a lot of flack. Dr. Umar Johnson, but he wrote a book about special ed and how it was used to weaponize versus Black boys, right? By giving them on the psychotropic drugs and everything, and sort of segregating them and getting them ready for the, you know, the school to prison pipeline. And when I started looking at some of the young men that I knew, and I was like, nah, he don't need, some of them need that medicine, but like, no, he don't need that medicine. He don't need, he needs somebody to say, hey, listen, you need to get your act together and get going. So during the pandemic, I know a lot of us were having trouble, you know, processing and adjusting to being locked down, being at home, dealing with this virus that we couldn't see, that was, you know, keeping us isolated from our family, you know, the isolation that came with that, losing family and friends at a high rate due to this virus. And there were a lot of adjustments that were made in terms of people being able to see a therapist. I know that you had told us that, hey, listen, you know, now they're allowing us to do virtual therapy, and you can see people if you're licensed in a particular state, you can see them online or whatever. Is that still a possibility? Are you able to see people virtually now? Have you seen a slowdown in terms of people because of COVID now that we're back outside? What have you seen since the pandemic has seemed to kind of go away, per se?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've seen a decrease in people seeking mental health services. Actually, I think that we're still seeing an increase. So there's still a bit of a kind of surge in people referring themselves and also people being referred. I think that for some people, even though we're back outside, the impact of the pandemic is just now hitting people as they're trying to figure out, like, how do I get back to normal? Or is life going to look the way it used to? Or how do I adjust? How do I figure out how to do the things that I like to do? So we're still seeing a lot of people requesting counseling. Virtual therapy, I think, is never going to go away now. You know, actually, virtual therapy was always a thing, but I think the percentage of people using it was extremely low pre-COVID. And it was really great for people to be able to transition to that during the pandemic and still be able to do counseling safely and things like that. And I think that some people are looking forward to getting back in person because counseling is a very personal, intimate experience. And I know I really prefer doing counseling in person with people. I prefer being in the room with my clients because there's a certain level of energy that is, you know, exchanged, and also just being held with your clients and for your clients. And I really appreciate that whole experience and being able to cultivate the relationship in a real deep, energetic, and spiritual way. But I don't think that virtual therapy will ever go away. You know, for some people, it's been something that has reduced barriers, you know, for some people where they might not have been able to get into an office and see a therapist, maybe because they have no transportation, or you know, a variety of reasons why they might not have been able to make it work in their schedule to go somewhere and see somebody. But now they can do Zoom or do, you know, use a platform on their phone or on their computer at home, and it just makes it more convenient. So I think that virtual therapy will always be a thing now. It'll be popular. It'll always be an option. And I think that it's going to be a little while before we see a decline in people seeking services, because the pandemic was hard. It was hard on people. It's been hard on kids too.
Hard on kids. It's been hard on marriages too.
Yeah,
It's been hard on
true.
all of us. Absolutely, it has. I think the virtual piece is a strong tool that that can be used, because again, for the things that you said in terms of
Hmm.
the barriers, transportation. Maybe some people are still scared to be
Right.
outside because of the pandemic. Um, I talked to a friend of mine, and we were talking about representation, going back to the early part of our discussion.
Hmm.
And she lived in a place where there was a small Black community. It was, not small, but it was tight knit in terms of, okay, educated. If you're like master's level, bachelor's degree, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
So, in order for somebody to seek counseling with somebody who looked like them, it was hard because they all knew each other. So,
Yes.
so it's either, okay, I'm going to have to get somebody who does not look like me, or maybe I can get with somebody from somewhere else that looks like me, but we just do it virtually. So I think it
Yeah.
opens up a lot of different avenues for people to seek therapy and to try to, work through whatever they have to work through. So a couple more questions I got for you.
Hmm.
Recently we had the tragedy in Buffalo, New York,
Yeah.
and you know, it's been a while since we've seen something like that. I mean, there's mass shootings that happen, it seems, way too often in our country, but we haven't seen something that's targeted the Black community in a minute. The what happened in South Carolina weighed heavily on all of us. Whenever there's like a police killing of a Black man or a Black woman, that weighs heavily on us. I know that this hit a lot of us hard,
Yeah.
and me myself, my how do I want to say it? Coping mechanism. My way to cope with it was, I really tried to avoid the news because I knew that it would trigger me. It would
Yeah.
trigger me. I know some people said I watched the video and they said I wish I hadn't. And in my mind,
Hmm.
I'm thinking like, what did you think was going to happen if you watched the video? What advice would you give to people who are dealing with situations like this, tragic occurrences that happen to our community, how to protect your mental well-being when you're often inundated with it on social media?
Yeah. So I think a big part is just knowing yourself. Like you just described, how it's going to make you feel to look at that. And so knowing yourself, knowing what's good for you, knowing what your body and your mind and your spirit needs to feel safe, for you to be able to function, for you to feel emotionally at least stable. Some of us are trying to reach emotionally well, but we'll be okay with emotionally stable.
Mhm.
I think a big piece is knowing yourself, because some people feel compelled to look at it, look at the news, look at the videos, look at the pictures of the people who are the victims. Some people feel compelled to action, and we all deal with these tragedies differently. And so I think it's really important first to know yourself, know what you need so that you can give yourself what you need. Another thing I think that's important for people to recognize is that these these traumatic events, there's an have an individual impact, and then there is a collective impact to us as a people, and that's real. It's not imaginary. I think sometimes as Black people we go back and forth, like wondering, you know you hear people say, oh, we're not a monolith, we there's so much diversity among us, and that's true. But there are things that affect us collectively. We have some collective pain at times when things like this happen. We don't know those people. You and I don't know those people in Buffalo, but that was painful.
Yes.
It's painful for us to learn about that. It felt like an attack on us, our community, our family,
Yes.
and we're not even in that part of the country. But that feeling that we have is very real. So I think it's important for people to maybe validate their own experience of the situation, and maybe sit with themselves and give themselves a little grace and say, you know what, I'm actually sad about this, and it's okay for me to be sad, disturbed, angry, enraged, all the things that we might be feeling. So just creating a safe space for that. And that might mean I might need to take off work because I'm so pissed that if I go into work, I don't know what I'm gonna say. Or
Right.
I might need to not take phone calls, or I might need to just take some time for myself to be upset. So I think it's the self-awareness, but then also allowing space for us to have the feelings that we have about these things when they happen, because we can't just ignore them. You know, I know a lot of people try to carry on by packing those feelings away, putting them in a box, tying a little bow on them and pushing it to the back.
Right. It'll come back. Trust me, it'll
Oh,
come back.
it will come back, and it'll come back when you're not prepared.
Right.
That's what I always tell my clients. You know, I have some clients who are like, oh, I don't like to cry, or I don't like how it feels when I'm really hurt. I'm like, I know that. I know you don't like it, but when you pack that away and you think you got it tucked back in a corner somewhere, it will come and surprise you when you're not prepared for it. And the best thing you can do is prepare for your feelings. You know, make a space and a time to experience them and honor them even. You know, it's just a way to love yourself well. Like, you know what? I deserve to experience all my feelings. So I'm gonna just create a space and a time for that. So it doesn't surprise me when I don't need to be surprised by that,
Right.
you know?
You're right. So like I went for years without crying. Like, you know, like the tears would come and I would hurry up and like, you know, suck it up or whatever, because number one, just like the client, I hate how I sound when I cry. Right. And I just, there's that whole machismo thing of being, you know, Black men don't cry, you know, suck it up, you know. And I talked about in my book how I used to tell my son, like, hey man, that, you know, men don't cry, let that, you know, just chalk that up. And then I talked in my book how I regret teaching him that lesson, how I came back and I said, hey, listen, if you're feeling something, process it and get it out, because that way you just cry, get it out, and then move on, right?
Yes.
And move on, because holding in those tears for years, I'm gonna tell people, it almost killed me. And
I can imagine.
it was just one day, you know, because it was grief, it was depression, it was anxiety, and just one day it all came, and I couldn't fight it. And then not only could I not fight it, I didn't want to fight it because I knew it's what I needed. And I cried for so long and for so hard. It took me about 2 days to recover because it was so exhausting, but I felt so much more free when I had let it go. So I mean, I hope that's a testimony to some people. Hey, this
I hope so too.
Cry and get it out, you know, cry and get it out. And then the important thing is move on, you know. Go ahead and get it out. Okay, but future doctor Kristina Jones, that's what I'm gonna call you, future doctor. Where can people find you? How can they follow you?
So I've just kind of reemerged on social media. So you can find me right now, mostly on Instagram at more.
You're a doctoral student, so you ain't got a lot of time, right?
That's what I mean.
So doctoral student,
right.
you still see clients, right?
I am, yeah.
And you're a full-time mom and wife. So you know,
I fell off social media for a minute, real hard.
It's all good. But where can they follow you?
Yes, so you can find me at More Grace Counseling. That's on Instagram. I'm going to be reactivating my page on Facebook, which is also More Grace Counseling and Mediation Services. Revamping my website, which is moregracecounseling.com. Marv is absolutely right. It has been difficult to juggle all these things, but I am nearing the end of my doctoral program, and I want to make sure that people can access me, that people can reach out to me, even if I'm not taking clients, which I'm not at this time, but I am a resource in the community. I get emails all the time asking me to connect them to other therapists that I would recommend. I love doing that for people. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me for that. I am starting to share more things about mental health, mental well-being on social media, because I think this conversation just needs to continue to happen. I want to start doing some videos talking about different mental health related topics. So I will probably be doing that soon. But yeah, I need to be out here. You know, I'm going to be publishing some things soon. Working on my dissertation. I'm doing some research, and everything that I'm working on is for our community, is for our people. So yeah, that's where you can find me, More Grace Counseling. I'm around, and I'll respond to you.
So I've always said you're one of my favorite follows. You're one of my favorite people. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Marv.
I want everybody to follow her. And if you're a therapist or somehow, some way related to, somebody who works in mental health, social worker, anybody, you need to follow her so we can expand this network. I mean, because I've often came to you and I said, hey, I got a family member that's across here, can you help me try to find somebody? And she's done that. So, if you're a therapist, a Black therapist from wherever, we need to, expand that network so that, you all can, because y'all are very important for our community, because we have dealt with trauma. The Black community, you talked about that collective experience. That trauma is something that we need to address, because, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think, me personally, I don't know the science behind it. You probably do. I personally feel like trauma can be passed down genetically to your children.
Marv, we need to do a show just on that. Let's talk about that one day.
Listen, I've seen it with my own eyes. That trauma, if we don't heal ourselves, right, it's going to continue to be passed down to our younger generations, and it's just going to continue to have the same problem. So we got to address those things. And absolutely, I'm gonna have you back. I'm gonna have you back.
Because not only can we pass down the trauma, but we can pass down the healing,
Right. And see, that's why I felt it was so important for me to heal myself, because a big part of what I do is I try to lead by example. And I try to let, other men know, hey, listen, because of Marv B, can't nobody say that's not a man's man. I'm a man's man, but I'm not ashamed to say I cry. I'm not ashamed to say I'll see a therapist, because I know that makes me a better man. That makes me a better father, a better brother, better friend, whatever. It makes me a better person. So if we get more people to do that, we'll be better off as a community. So make sure y'all follow her, More Grace Counseling, on Instagram. We'll get the Facebook going. We'll share that. And when she starts,
it'll be back
again. I promote her business because I believe in her, and I really think that you all will benefit from, following future Dr. Kristina Jones. Thank you for coming on the show. Make sure y'all follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Man Listen Show. Subscribe to the show. Let everybody know about the Blackest Radio Show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. We'll holler at you next time. Peace.